Radio.
Hello, welcome to today's episode of Juicing the Numbers, Your Statistics, and Sports Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Joshua Tracy.
And I'm just some other guy that's here, Corbin Hellier.
And that's all you'll ever be.
Thanks, Mom.
Fuck you. Anyway, welcome to the show today. We've got on another guest. It's 2 Monday episodes in a row with guests. You are very welcome, listeners. You should feel very grateful. We are joined today by Max Greenfield, Pitchers List. So we'll play that conversation for you in a minute. We talked about some pitch valuation stuff. We talked about Trevor Bauer. We complained once again, 2 weeks in a row, complaining about why MLB seemingly can't remove head from ass when it comes to anything that matters. So it's a really good conversation. We're really looking forward to playing it for you. So without further ado, here it is. Okay. And we're on with Max Greenfield of Pitcher List, right, Max? Is there anything? First off, hi.
Hello. Yes, that is correct. I am a writer at Pitcher List.
We were talking.
I just want to know that. I just want to get that out of the way immediately. It's a site I live on every single day during the baseball season.
Yeah, if you play fantasy baseball, if you play fantasy baseball, you're going to be on that site a lot.
Actually, did you play fantasy baseball this year? This is the first year I did do it in a while.
So
Same.
What's funny is my job at Pitcher List is to write about, fantasy sleepers and stuff, figure out sort of like players and potentially schedules and everything that could favor fantasy and players. I have not played fantasy baseball in like 5 years. I don't really do it, but I'm technically writing about it, but I don't play fantasy baseball or anything.
I get it.
Last year I didn't do it because I was going to work for the Nationals and it didn't feel right playing fantasy baseball when you're working for a team. I feel like that's just like a little bit of a ethical thing.
Little Pete Rose-ish.
Yeah, it feels a little wrong. Even if it doesn't matter, it still feels a little wrong.
Yeah.
The other thing was it's just there's a huge difference between like fantasy value and like real life actual baseball game value. And a lot of my analysis and like what I want to do is much more in the real life value, and that doesn't always translate to fantasy value. But I try to, when I'm writing for Pitcher List, my articles about players, I'm trying to do both tell you what their value is fantasy wise and tell you what their value is in real life, like what they're good at that helps to lead to success in terms of total value, but also like here's how they can help your fantasy team.
That's the tough part about fantasy baseball when it comes to pitchers is that wins becomes a meaningful stat.
It sucks.
The worst way.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like I remember one year I had Dallas Keuchel, but back when he was like at the end of his Astros tenure, when he was only pitching like 5 or 6 innings at a shot, and it's like, all right, he's kind of having a shit. I guess this was 2018.
Probably like 2017, 2018, right?
Yeah. So he wasn't like on, but like the team was good. So it wasn't going very deep, but he was getting wins, and it's like,
Yep.
This isn't a great pitching performance, but like it's 5 points a win.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the one of the best gets in fantasy is going to be like Zach Britton, because he's just going to rack up so many holds, right? I mean, he's going to end the year with like 25 to 30 holds, and in a save hold lead, like that's going to be so much value. And he's not going to, he'll close occasionally, so he'll rack up some saves, but it's just going to be so many holds where it's like, he's not going to get you the strikeouts. He's going to walk a lot of people. But those holds, though, there's a lot of holds.
There's a lot of points in those holds.
Yes. So from a fantasy perspective, somebody like Zach Britton, or, on the, let's talk, if we're talking like the Padres, right? I don't know who their closer is going to be, but, Craig Stammen for a few years.
Pomeranz?
Drew, is it going to be Pomeranz? They're
Probably.
bullpen is wild because they have many guys who could close, but I don't know if they're going to like just set a closer. But either way, I mean, Pomeranz wouldn't be like the worst option in the world. He went from mediocre starter to elite reliever in literally like 2 weeks. It was crazy.
Yeah. That's really just based off of when we had to, he would fill in that role and he would take those high leverage situations last year with Rosenthal gone, with Kirby Yates not coming back. Yeah, he's the likeliest to fill in.
Then his fantasy value is skyrocketed because of that. It also skyrocketed because he went from throwing 91, 92 to 98. So that there's
helps.
There's that part of it too.
Yeah, that helps a little bit. So we first off, thank you again, Max, for joining us. We really appreciate it. We had just talked about not fantasy baseball, the idea of pitch value. And when I floated it to you, you said, what type? And I immediately ran out of knowledge.
Yeah. So a lot of you've probably, the fact that you're aware of like pitch value, like the metrics behind it, is probably because you're aware that there seems to be a shift in pitching analysis away from just like general ERA metrics or ERA estimators towards, well, let's evaluate the types of pitches that they throw, right? And how good those pitches are and everything. And that's good. You're on the right track, because we are sort of shifting away from, oh, well, this person's FIP is lower than their ERA, they should get better. Like, that's lazy analysis. Now we need to sort of say, okay, how good's their stuff? And like, what pitches do they throw well? What pitches could be effective and why? So I always start with Baseball Savant's run value metric. So if you go on a player page and you go down to their pitch arsenal, you're going to see an eventual like chart that has their run values. And Savant's really nice because everything's color coordinated, with blue being bad, red being good, right? Which is reverse of how you would expect it. But so you're going to see some people where, so the most valuable pitch in 2020 was Nielsen Lamet's slider. It was worth -19 runs, so it saved 19 runs. And yes, I see the woot woot for Nielsen Lamet. That is my boy. I love that guy. All the trades the Padres made, people kept saying, Nielsen Lamet, he must not be healthy. And I'm like, please don't say that. That would hurt. I love that man. But so what, from there we can see how valuable the pitch was, and then we can look at the underlying metrics like the swing strike percentage, the whiff percentage, how many, what's the xWOBA on the pitch or the WOBA on the pitch, and sort of go from there to figure out, okay, it was worth, so like Max Fried's fastball was worth -9 runs, right? But the underlying metrics behind it say that it really shouldn't be that good. And from there we can see that he doesn't get like great whiffs on it. His spin rate is good, not great. His active spin rate or spin efficiency on the ball, which for those who don't know what that is, spin efficient, so you have spin, which is just the total amount of RPMs, and then spin efficiency or active spin is the amount of RPMs that are dedicated to movement. And the higher the percentage, the greater the Magnus force on the pitch is, dedicating it to the movement of the pitch. So for a fastball, it would be sort of how the ball looks to be rising. I'm sure you guys have heard of like the rising fastball. Like, since you're a Yankee fan, you watch Chad Green pitch and people would say, it looks like his fastball rises all the time, right? That's because he gets really good spin efficiency on his fastball. So that's, and you want that on a fastball. It's not necessarily it's not necessary, but it's good to have. Like Garrett Cole, his fastball, really high spin efficiency. And that makes sense because he throws it up in the zone at 100 miles an hour and just says, have fun trying to hit this. And then when it gets lower in the zone and it's 100 miles an hour right down the middle, it doesn't really matter. He's done half the work for you when it gets sent.
Right.
But so Max Fried's fastball is really low in spin efficiency, which is normally a concern, but he just has really good command of it. So all of this leads back to, we're evaluating pitches based off of, first of all, like spin, how they move, the spin efficiency, and then how valuable is that pitch, and like, can we figure out if it should be more or less valuable based on underlying metrics?
One of the things I've wondered about pitch valuation is, does it get affected, or should it be, by the setup and follow-up pitches involved in it?
That's a really good question. Let me answer it by saying most publicly available data cannot answer that question. But I can tell you that from my time that there are certain pitchers that I worked with in my little bit time at the Nats that really like that information and think it's incredibly valuable. There was I don't want to say who because I'm sure my former employer would
industry
say,
secrets.
Yeah, they would tell me like, don't be telling people that. So I'm not going to, but I can tell you that we had a conversation. He said, I would love to know, if I throw a fastball in this count to this guy, how likely is it going to be effective, and how effective does it make my slider, right? And so conversations like that happen internally with teams, and they're researching that and figuring that stuff out. Publicly, there's not really a lot of metrics that do that. And to be honest, it's hard. Like like if let's say Garrett Cole or Dinelson Lamet throw a 98-mile-an-hour fastball up and in to a right-hander, and then the next pitch they throw their slider or curveball and get them swinging. Hypothetically, intuitively, you would believe that the fastball helps set up that curveball and slider, and you're probably right, but we can't necessarily prove that, in terms of like quantifying the valuation of the pitch. So like, yeah, he got a swing and a miss on a curveball or slider out of the zone, which is great, but the fastball helps set that up. So how valuable is that fastball? That's a great question that we haven't really gotten an answer for yet. I think we're going to get it one day, but right now, I mean, we don't really have an answer.
And this is like the most fun part of dealing with the complicated side of baseball statistics is how much of what we're looking at can be routinely defined by numbers and answers, and how much of it is going to be shit we just can't figure. Like, you could take the abstract concept that the series, the sequence, fastball, changeup, slider, we'll call that the most effective sequence in a vacuum. But you go from there, how fast is the fastball, how slow or how much tail does the changeup have, and then how aggressive does the slider break? Which zones are they actually being thrown in? Which time through the rotation is this?
Mm-hmm.
You have all different types of right-handed versus left-handed with the dexterity and the matchup of the dexterity. And that's the part of pitch valuation I find to be so interesting, because like the idea of hitting a baseball is so fucking hard.
Yes.
that the odds of you hitting 100-mile-an-hour fastball, whether it's good or bad in terms of its spin efficiency or its pitch valuation, is probably pretty low, but there's still good 100-mile-an-hour fastballs and less good 100-mile-an-hour fastballs.
Yes, you're right. Like there's a good 84-mile-an-hour slider, and there's a bad 84-mile-an-hour slider, right? One that is tailing away from the hitter and gets him to chase out of the zone is a good one. One that doesn't really slide much and ends up right in the hitter's happy zone is not as good, right? But there is your first point about what's quantifiable and what's not. That's a really good question. A project that I've always wanted to do, but I don't know if it has a ton of value anymore, is all offensive metrics don't take into account pitch count, right? Mm-hmm. So an 11 pitch at bat, let's say it results in a single, shows up in this box score the same as a 1 pitch at bat, right? It's you got a single, you got on base, like there's no difference in terms of the box score, right? But hypothetically, back in the day, there used to be a big difference between an 11 pitch at bat and a 1 pitch at bat, right? Because the more tired the starter gets, you get into the bullpen with the hypothetically worse pitchers, quote unquote worse, and you knock the starter out of the game. But in today's game, that's not really true anymore. Like relievers come out of there and they're all throwing 95 plus with nasty off speed, right? They're not necessarily worse pitchers now. You see teams like they're trying to, instead of build great starting rotations, most of them are trying to build great bullpens, right? And they'll just live with it. I mean, that's the Tampa Bay Rays have been great the last 3 years by just building really good bullpens. That's how they do it. And obviously, they just got to the World Series, so if in some aspect it must be working. And even to the Dodgers,
we're very willing to get rid of their top starting pitcher.
Yeah,
or more relievers.
They've got rid of They didn't give Charlie Morton his option, which was shocking. Then they traded away Blake Snell, which was, I guess, maybe at the time I was a little surprised just because I was like, really? But the more you think about it, the more you're like, yeah, that is what they do, isn't it? And it's unfortunate. That's a different conversation for a different time about the owner spending habits in baseball. But yeah, I would love to see it. What is there a clear answer of what we can define and what we can't? I don't think so. Like you try. I think the answer is you always try. If you don't, if you're not successful in quantifying it, then it's fine. But at least you tried. Where does it? Some people can say, "Oh, where does it stop? We're just going to let baseball be run by computers." No, that's never going to happen. Like at the end of the day, there's still got to be some guy out there throwing a ball and some guy out there trying to hit it.
Well, that and the uncertainty or the non-analytical part of the decision-making process is just going to shift places, and that's where the manager is going to step in, or the human element. We've gone from saying, he looks tired, let's take him out. Pitcher number 5 looks pretty beat up out there, let's move on, to, all right, we are, approaching the third time through the order. He's already had to use his third pitch. He's only got the 3 of them. They've now all been seen. The matchup favors bringing in Chad Green. Let's bring him in, and then the decision making has progressed from being, wow, he looks tired, to I now have facts and reasons for making this decision outside of how tired my guy looks, and it'll keep moving in that direction.
I think obviously that gets brought up a lot with in the World Series, Kevin Cash decided to pull Blake Snell. And a lot of people are saying, "Oh, it's too soon. Like, he should have stayed in there." I don't know what the right answer is. Truth be told, like, you can make an argument that he should have gotten pulled. You can make an argument that he should have left him in there. I don't know if it really matters. But I think the mistake was bringing in Nick Anderson. But I mean, it's more it more says a lot about the sport altogether that they got there by pulling Blake Snell. That's how the Rays got there. They got to the World Series because they made those decisions to pull him. And in the first 4 innings, I think Blake Snell registered like 13, 14 swings and misses. Like, he was absolutely dealing. But then in the last 5 batters he faced, he only got 1 swing and miss. Usually if you start generating less swings and misses, that's usually a sign that your stuff's starting to go, that you're not getting,
a leading indicator.
Yeah. So there's a good chance Kevin Cash knew that. Like, a really good chance he knew that he wasn't getting swings and misses anymore. And he probably decided, hey, he's not getting swings and misses anymore. His fastball velocity is already down. It's probably best if I get somebody up in the bullpen and be ready to go, because that's what I've done all year. And here I am in Game 6 of the World Series. Why am I going to deviate? And also, in grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. The Rays scored 1 run. You're not going to beat the Dodgers scoring 1 run. If we want to go over that decision all we want, that's fine. But you got to score more than 1 run against the Dodgers.
Yeah. It's you're definitely picking on the little things if
you
didn't have a chance to win it outside of that anyway.
That's did you
that
really
one decision didn't make or break the game?
Exactly. Did you really believe that the Dodgers were going to lose 1-0? That offense 1-0? Yeah, no. I mean, you can't expect the Rays bullpen to be perfect when they've been, throwing all the time.
Yeah, they're not the Seattle Mariners. Come on.
Yeah. It's definitely. I think the conversations around that game are super misleading. Everyone just focuses on the bullpen decision. I'm just sitting over here they scored 1 run. That's why they lost, not because Kevin Cash pulled Blake Snell. They lost because they scored 1 run.
It often boils down to what's the lowest common denominator. What can everyone universally be angry about that we can then talk about on the radio?
I'm sure. I don't know how it was with the Padres because they were such a fun and entertaining team. But I follow a lot of Yankee fans because I used to be a Yankee fan. I grew up a Yankee fan, but now I'm just like whoever pays me, that's who I'm going to root for. So,
It's a good strategy.
Yeah, I feel like that's the way to go. So I was paying more attention to the Nationals this year than any team. Like that's the team I paid the most attention to. But my dad is still a Yankees fan, so like I would check in. And man, maybe I don't know how it is with Padres fans, but every single decision Aaron Boone made, whether it was right or wrong, just got nitpicked to death on from Yankee fans. And I was just like, oh my God, it does not matter that much. Jesus. But I don't know if they did the same with Padres fans did with Jace Tingler. I thought Padres fans, from my interactions, seemed to have a much better perspective on things.
Yeah, we generally support Tingler. We can kind of rationalize why he's doing the things until he forces, young superstars to apologize for
Yeah, that was
having
stupid.
fun playing baseball in front of, global media. No big deal,
That part was
some
stupid,
things.
but there's definitely, there is appeal. I talked about this with MLB Network. They just wrapped up their top 10 rankings, right? I feel MLB Network, while for the most part they do a lot of things well, they appeal to the lowest common denominator in everything they do. Everything. And so like they have the opportunity to make the fans of the game smarter. And that's a really big problem in baseball in terms of like fandom is that they're the analytics, the sabermetrics, they're not going away. The data, it's only going to get bigger, right? And MLB Network's just still sitting there using the same old batting average, runs, and RBI, and all that stuff to talk about who should be the MVP and everything. And it's like, no, stop, stop. Like we have moved on, and they have this great opportunity to make the game smarter, to stop getting all these discussions on things that don't matter. Like, well, this guy had 20 more RBI than he did. I remember, the peak of it was years ago with Josh Donaldson versus Mike Trout. People kept citing Josh Donaldson's high RBI count versus Mike Trout. And I was like, that's just because Josh Donaldson plays on a better team. Like, it's not that hard. It's not really that hard to think about. Jose Abreu led the American League in RBI. Yeah, because the White Sox were good and he was one of their good hitters.
Yeah. Well,
it's not hard.
They treat the boilerplate stats that don't matter much, like batting average, as being the main stats, and then all the stats that do matter as like also he does this, when it should be the other way around. And I think they're missing an opportunity in doing exactly what you're saying, because batting average, I think, works as a discussion point for the older generation, because it's observable. It's a little intuitive. It's like, yes, he went up to the plate and he either did or did not hit the ball.
Yeah.
And that is how we are measuring this statistic. And then they're treating everything else like fancy science math.
Yes.
Who knows how they do that stuff? When a lot of it's still really intuitive.
Yeah,
because if it wasn't, they wouldn't measure it. Like
exactly.
And that's the thing that I like about pitch valuation, because it feels like it's that next step towards, when you see it on TV. Yeah. Now we have a number for it.
Correct.
And that's what I would wish they would do, because that's the type of conversation I'd rather, as much as I love listening to like the color commentators, like I love listening to David Cohn,
he's
Yankees
great.
Broadcast, because he's great and he does do a lot of the advanced metric stuff. But as much as I love hearing the rationale of the sequencing, I'd also love to hear his changeup has a value above average, or a what was the negative metric that we had just mentioned?
Run value metric.
Right. A run value of -10, which is better or in line with the industry average, what have you. Because then when you see that changeup, when you see that curveball, when you see that slider, and you go, hey, that looks pretty good, you can go, yes, it is. In fact, it is X% better than the other guys, which is, again, an observable, like, you'll see it. You'll know.
Yes. That's one of my, that's a great point. I think you guys are lucky because Yankee fans, A, they get David Cohn, who's great, and B, Padres fans get, I love their booth. Their booth is fantastic. Don Arcillo and Mark Grant, so good. They're
Best
really,
tandem in
really,
baseball.
yeah.
Oh my God.
I I would watch Padres games and I would just be like, this is nice. But on a national stage, right? So you guys are lucky because I know in the Padres games they do talk about some of that stuff every now and again, and that's great. In the Yankees games, I know that they do that too. But on the national stage, when you got John Smoltz just sitting there shitting on the shift per se, you know, uh,
A
there was
very basic rudimentary concept.
yeah, really not. They hit it here often. We should put people there. It's not hard. And
How do you
he's
think the
like,
positions got there in the first place?
yeah,
It's
exactly.
breaking the integrity of the game.
By putting people in the field.
We
There are
want
no
to be
rules
better
against
at defense. How dare you?
I want to make sure the other team scores less runs. How dare I do that? But I mean, it's a real problem when he's sitting there just ripping into the shift. And one of my favorite things was in the World Series. I don't remember which game, but in the span of like 2 innings, right? He went from ripping on the shift because it gave up a base hit. But then the next inning, the shift was able to help them turn a double play because of where they were positioned. And Smoltz didn't say diddly squat about it. He said nothing. And that's the problem is that you have these people, and you see it in other sports. I mean, I don't know if you guys are basketball fans, but Shaq and
No, I'm not. I'm very much so not.
hey, they're in the playoffs right now. Take it.
Yeah.
But
Emmanuel quickly.
Yes, but you got Shaq. Like I'm sure you guys saw what Shaq did to Donovan Mitchell, right? Straight up to his face, just told him, "I don't think you're capable of leading a team." How is that beneficial to the sport? Like, explain to me how that's beneficial to the sport. And in baseball, it's the same thing. You got John Smoltz just sitting out there. I feel bad for Joe Buck because I think Joe Buck's actually a pretty good play-by-play guy, but his
I love
color
Joe
guys.
Buck.
His color guys stink. He's got John Smoltz and Troy Aikman. That's terrible. Like that's why he gets so much rap. Before John Smoltz, he had what was his name? Tim McCarver, who was terrible too. And for football, he's had Troy Aikman for years now. That I think people can't separate the fact that Joe Buck's a pretty good play-by-play guy. He just doesn't have good color guys. But it's back to the point, as you said, it would be so nice to hear. And it's easier with hitters because, like, oh, they hit the ball hard. How much better are they at hitting the ball hard than other players? That's super easy, and that information is readily available. But oh, he threw that 1-1 slider. Dialson Lamet threw that 1-1 slider that set up his fastball. Well, how good is that slider relative to other sliders? And like that would be a great conversation to have on a broadcast of like, you just saw a really good pitch. Well, how good is that pitch actually? Right? Explain how good that pitch is with data. Don't just, you don't have to just sit there and say, oh, see that slider just set up that one, that 1-2 fastball. Yeah, everyone can see that. You don't, it's not some earth-shattering analysis for John Smoltz to say that the previous pitch set up the next one. We all saw that. But explain how valuable that pitch is. That makes your fan base, that makes the viewers smarter. They learned something from that. And then it's sort of like, I wonder how they did that. Then they go online and they see and they read, and they don't actually do this, but I would hope they
subscribe to Pitchers List.
Yeah, and subscribe to Pitchers List where we go over that stuff. But yeah, it's I mean, every day I see somebody post something about how, like, a popular topic right now I think is the Rangers and A's just made a trade yesterday where the Rangers shipped Elvis Andrews to Oakland and Chris Davis to Texas in what was a pure salary dump move. So now it's got people questioning of like, oh, is Joey Gallo available from the Rangers, right? And I think every team should be pining after Joey Gallo. I think obviously, A, he's an amazing defender, so his floor is going to be really high. And B, dude, he just hits tanks, right? Like straight up tanks. The man launches the ball, and it's so much fun. But you got fans who are like, well, he's a 208 hitter with a 327 on base percentage. First of all, the fact that his on base percentage is over 100 points higher than his batting average shows that like he has a really high ceiling. Like if he just starts making contact more often, then like he can do really amazing things. But fans don't understand that. Like they just see the low batting average and get confused. And
I hope that if Joey Gallo does get traded to the Yankees, which wouldn't happen, but let's assume it does. I would hope sincerely in my heart of hearts that he bats 180 with a WRC plus of 141 just to make everyone shut the fuck up.
If he gets a hit, it's a home run.
Yeah.
He hits 180 with like a 340 on base percentage and like a 530 slugging.
He goes 1 for 2 per game. Or like one, like 1 for 3 on average per game, 2 walks, that 1 hits a home run. Go have a ball.
He'll go 1 for 3, 1 for 4, 1 for 5, and then have a couple walks tripped in there, but every single hit is a home run.
Yeah, all of them.
Finish the season with 162 home runs and loses the MVP because,
Yes.
like, are you kidding me? He bats like 150. What the fuck?
It would be
sucks.
It would be hysterical. That is the day I'm looking for, is like the old Adam Dunn stat lines of like 230, but he had 40 home runs and like a 330 on base, 340 on base, and everyone's like, Adam Dunn is not really that good of a hitter. Adam Dunn is a great hitter, god damn it.
Oh,
Jesus Christ.
I know.
What would the pitching equivalent of that be? You strike out every guy until you give up a home run?
Yeah, so like you get a lot of strikeouts, but when you do give up contact, it gets crushed. So like Josh Hader,
Exactly,
he gets a lot of strikeouts, but when he gives it contact, it seems like it just gets crushed.
At least last season.
Yeah, and it was hilarious because in 2019, if you looked at his baseball savant page, it was like K percentage 100, walk percentage like 98, whiff percentage 100, and then it was just like hard hit rate 1, barrel percentage 1. It's like he doesn't give up much contact, but when he does, oh, that baby's getting crushed. Another guy is Tanner Rainey of the Nationals. He's like that. He doesn't give up a lot of contact, but when he does, oh man, that ball gets just annihilated. It's hysterical. There's a lot of guys, a lot of Edwin Diaz is sort of like that. He was much better in 2020 than he was much better in 2019 than his numbers showed, but he was much better in 2020 even with that. But he's a guy like guys who throw hard, but their fastball doesn't like move a ton, doesn't rise a lot, or doesn't cut or sink a bunch. Like those guys tend to be the ones that just give up like hard contact because if you make contact, they've done some of the work for you, right? Like Edwin Diaz is throwing 100 miles an hour. Yeah, if you make contact, you're probably going to hit it pretty good.
While we're on the subject, Max, you're clearly much smarter about baseball and actual pitching mechanics and what makes a pitch good. How do we fix Edwin Diaz? How do we do it?
I
Get him off the Mets.
I think in 2019 he just had an unsustainable problem of the home run. Like he gave up home runs at a crazy high rate, and a home run to fly ball ratio on Fangraphs you can see it's not stable. There's a lot of variation in it year to year. So the biggest way to fix Edwin Diaz is he's just got to locate his fastball better. Like that's the first step. And he did that in 2020. His fastball definitely he was a little bit crisper with it, had better command of the pitch. The other thing is Diaz, it looked like he wasn't really too comfortable with like the pitch calling of his catcher. We were talking about pitch sequencing and how valuable that really is. We may not have a value of it, but there is and a lot of it comes from like a catcher, and I'll relate it to not to bring up painful memories for Josh, but in ALDS game 5 with Chapman facing Mike Brasso, you can clearly see that Gary Sanchez is calling for something off speed before that home run, but Chapman shakes it off because he's like, I want to be beat with my fastball if I'm going to be beat. Brazo is way out in front. If he gets something off speed there, he's swinging through it. Like if it's at all close, he's going to swing through it. I think with Diaz, it's sort of the same thing as like he has to just trust his off speed stuff as much as he trusts his fastball. Like his off speed stuff is good. That slider is dirty. Like he needs to trust it. And I know that's not like this grand analytical explanation of like, well, his slider moves like this and you should do like sometimes it's a very basic explanation of just like he just needs to trust it. Some guys lose confidence. That's it. And Edwin Diaz clearly just lost a lot of confidence in 2019. And in 2020, I think I thought the Mets did the right thing and said, like, you're still a great pitcher. You're still going to be our closer. Like, we want you to be the guy for us. And he showed, like, he's like, if you give me a chance, I can succeed. And he did. He was much, much better in 2020. So I think I understand that Mets fans have been through a lot with the Wilpons and everything, and it's not getting any easier this offseason, even though they said it was supposed to, but it has not, thanks to some very horrible things that have been done by some very, very bad people. So my answer to Edwin Diaz is his command of his fastball needs to improve, and he just needs to trust his off-speed stuff. I feel like when he got into a pinch, he only went to the fastball, and it's just he shouldn't do that. Trust the off-speed.
So how much?
So we need him
sorry,
to get really drunk, get his dick sucked, and just get his confidence back and pitch better.
Yeah,
he's got an ugly girlfriend.
The explanation. Yeah,
Sure,
God.
Steve Cohen can figure that out.
Steve Cohen's got so many things to worry about right now, thanks to. First of all, but this is unrelated, but how does Sandy Alderson still have a job? Like, I'm dead serious.
Mickey Callaway's not fired yet. There's a whole bunch of questions with the culture of baseball right now that make no fucking sense. And someone's got to get some responsibility here.
Mickey Callaway is not fired because California, I live here, has labor laws that say you can't fire an employee without an investigation.
I know, but that investigation should have been 5 minutes. Man, there's screenshots.
Yeah, there's no like, the fact that he's still not fired after all this time is like, all right, how long does this investigation really need to be, right? Like, so there's nothing there. But Alderson hired Porter and Callaway, and clearly, with the thing about Porter was, okay, maybe it wasn't as known, right? Like, you have to figure somebody from another team knew, or other women, and not interviewing women. That's bad enough. Like, that's like, all right, come on, dude. But then with Callaway, it had been known for years about this, and they knew, the Mets knew, and still brought him back, right? Like, that's the problem. And then again, no one's been held accountable about it, right? Like, we haven't asked a single person, like, hey, you hired this person, why? What happened? Right? Because if you work in a regular job and you're a hiring manager and you hire 2 people that were accused of sexual assault or harassment within like a couple years, and both of them came out at the same time, you would probably be fired.
Oh, yeah.
Like a very high chance you would be fired. But Alderson's still there. He still has a job. And it's mind-blowing to me.
Cora and I talk about this a lot when it comes to the old boys club of whoever is running every single sport. Baseball's like this, football's like this. It seems like every fucking sport's like this. And
yes,
it puts fans in just the worst fucking position,
yep.
As well as, everybody getting sexually assaulted by monsters, because there is a calculus being done that, hey, his on the field product's good. Let's forgive the atrocities. And it's like, no, because then not only if I'm a Mets fan, do I have to go figure out how to still root for my team, or if I'm an Angels fan, since Callaway's still there for the time being, I have to figure out how to still root for my team. And then it's like, if Porter made a good free agent signing, am I happy about that now? Am I, you know what I mean? And then you have to deal with the fact, like, all right, are the Mets more fundamentally broken in a more meaningful and impactful way than I thought 3 weeks ago? Like, it would behoove them to just do the right thing for the sake of ease, and they still don't do it.
Yeah, when we talk about, there are certain things where it's like super cut and dry. And with Porter, it was easy because he's not a player, right? Like, you can just get rid of him and not really have any consequences. But with players, it becomes more complicated, especially in domestic abuse situations. There's, I'm sure, Josh, you know who Lindsay Adler is because she's beat writer for the Yankees.
Lindsay.
Yes, Lindsay's great. And she's written many times about how, like, this idea of a zero tolerance policy with like domestic violence and abusers and stuff is nice in theory, and it makes us feel good of like, yes, because bad people don't deserve good things. A non-argumentative point, like, I'm not going to disagree, like, that's very true, but the problem is, like, it doesn't actually fix the issue. Like, it actually puts victims in more risk because now their job has been taken away, and now they might feel more resentment towards the victim and might act out even more and again, and that's a
The
problem.
stakes of speaking up are higher.
Yes, correct. You're exactly right. Is so now they are less likely to come forward, and it's already extremely difficult for these women or men who are ever in these situations to come forward, right? So, when people are like, "Well, what's the solution?" The answer is very plainly, I don't know. I hate that that's my answer is like I don't know what the solution is, and I don't know like what to do with players, but I can tell you like from a front office personnel or a coaching perspective, you know, right? If these people do these things, you can get rid of them. Like
Well,
it's
and
not as easy with a player, sure, but with the coaches and front office people who sexually harass and abuse their power like this, you can get rid of them.
and to speak to the point you made just prior to that of what's the right answer is, it would be sad, Max, if you had the answer for that, because it would mean that baseball either one didn't or two did and didn't care.
Yep.
It shouldn't really be the fans' job to figure out the problems here when the MLB has, I'm going to assume, a lot of resources, read dollars, to reach out to legal experts and penal code experts who could figure out, and domestic abuse situation handling experts that could figure out the best way to actually approach these things and put time, energy, money, and concern into the problem, and instead don't. Again, the easy concept of, hey, let's pay smart people to figure out this problem that we have no understanding of. And instead, they choose the hard way of doing nothing and then looking bad because they're wrong in like a moral and consequential way. Which again,
Yep.
why? Why do it? Why constantly do things the worst possible way to save yourself like a year maybe of bad press and then end up getting it later on anyway?
The Mets.
Yeah.
We talk about this a lot.
Yeah.
It's
it's good that you talk
infuriating.
about it because like, we should talk about it. We need to talk about it. It's just I always come back to when I talk about it with people of like, I don't have the answer, and I don't think anybody does. And on the one hand, it's not up to the fans to decide that. And on the other hand, it's also like, the leagues, and their response is going to be, we're not responsible for stopping these people from doing these things. And it's like, okay, sure, but you are responsible for, them in a certain respect, right? Like they are employees of these teams that are a part of your league. And so you are responsible for them. But, the simple explanation is there are bad people who do bad things, and sometimes getting rid of that is not very easy.
No, no,
This is very
it is
far
not.
from pitch valuation, but we were talking about
Well, to loop it back
that's-
in, it's funny that baseball can figure out how to put a missile guidance system into every baseball stadium to track pitches, but can't figure out how to kick bad people out of playing baseball.
Yep.
It's
One
because
seems
they
far
care
more
about one of
complicated.
those two things.
That's
Actually,
true.
One of
Yeah.
those two things makes the money.
Yes. One.
Yeah.
The other, they're just like, this is an inconvenience.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Shit, this is bad for PR.
Yeah.
Someone get more baseball trackers in here.
And it's also funny because it's like baseball doesn't know what PR is.
Ugh.
They're like, just go sign Bartolo Cologne and we're fine.
Fat man hits home runs. World is happy.
Yes. World okay as world crumbles around.
I
Heavy
think there's
man
plenty
hit
of
ball
baseball
far.
fans that would genuinely be okay with the status of the world right now as long as Bartolo Colon is still batting.
Hey, let's make him GM.
What's the worst that could happen?
Oh God.
He makes
Actually, I don't wanna
himself
think about that
manager
question.
and an everyday player.
If I ever see
Play a
Bartolo on an
coach.
MLB team again, I think I might like riot. I might find the
Would
person who signed them.
I thought
Okay,
you were going to say something very different. Other end of the spectrum.
semi-serious question. Would Bartolo Colon make the Angels rotation better or worse?
Definitely worse. I think he makes every rotation worse, except for maybe like the Pirates. Or the
Ooh,
Rockies.
that's fair. As a
Oh,
former Pirates fan, Corwin, I'm sure you're very sad.
yeah.
Dude, the Pirates are. I feel back. My godfather, he's from Pennsylvania. He's from the Pittsburgh area. He's a huge Pirates fan. And every time, like when they traded Josh Bell, and then they traded Joe Musgrove, and they traded Jameson Taillon, uh, I'd sent him a message. He goes, "This is just what it's like." It's like, I'm
Yep.
so sorry.
We did a whole episode last year before last season. Basically, I was surrendering all rights to be a fan of the Pirates because of how bad, Nutting and the rest of
Yep.
that front office fucks
Bob
the
Nutting
team over
sucks.
every
Yeah.
year.
Bob
And
Nutting is the worst.
thank God we ended up with the Padres. Holy shit.
Yeah, I Bob Nutting is the thing about this is a most owners are like this is Bob Nutting. He's just like, as long as I make 15th in revenue, or like am I 15th in revenue or whatever, I'm fine, because then I can just coast off of the revenue sharing and I'll be fine. Like winning doesn't matter. It's just about making sure I make enough to not be in the upper echelon to where I get stuff taken away from me and I can just make money off the revenue sharing.
Yep. What was Josh, I know I sent this to you the other day, but what is it? If you put all of the top individual salaries, just ranked them of all the top yearly AAVs, the Pirates would finish like 8th.
Yep.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yep.
Sorry, 13th.
Really?
Wow.
13th?
Yeah.
Well,
It goes
that
Bauer,
low?
Trout, DeGrom / Cole. Then Strasburg, Greinke, Arenado at 5th. Scherzer's 8th. Verlander's 9th. Price and Machado are tied for 10th. Kershaw is 12th, and the Pittsburgh Pirates are 13th.
Where did I send that to you?
In the
text.
text messages. Yeah.
Yep. Fourth service the charm.
Yep.
All
That's
right, hold on.
sad.
I want to loop us back into pitch value with another question about your opinion on a trade. In a rare event, the Yankees and Red Sox made a trade this year, which I didn't. I thought that was a prank when I saw it on Twitter, because that just it's too. If you don't follow baseball, it's too weird to think about. It's like the teams that just don't fucking trade. Like the Jets and Patriots have done more business than the Red Sox and the Yankees in recent years. But Adam Ottavino is getting moved to the Red Sox, and Ottavino has been a point of discussion for the past probably 3 years in baseball, since he got that warehouse in Brooklyn to reinvent all of his pitches.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering, because I watched Ottavino last season with the Yankees in the shortened 2020 season, and obviously he didn't have the world's greatest season, but his pitches still had movement to a pretty large degree. He just had a lot of problems finding the strike zone, and then he seemed to get batted around a lot. But the core concept, I guess, of a breaking ball pitch still existed within his arsenal. It seemed as though the application of it was lacking. And I'm wondering, at what point does that, measurable versus underlying metric overlap in any meaningful? At what point do you say, yeah, his pitches are moving great, they're moving better than average pitches, but for whatever reason, they're getting rocked off the face of the earth, and we have to get out of this? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So your question is sort of like, okay, the metric, the underlying stuff says it should be good, but it's not. Why? The biggest reason is probably going to be command. Like Ottavino's command is just bad. he walks a lot of guys,
Everybody.
and then when he finally has to come over the center of the plate, like they're all expecting it, right? It doesn't matter how much it moves. They're just like, well, there it is. Like it's got to come over the center of the plate at some point. Ottavino really only had one like truly just atrocious outing versus Toronto. That kind of threw everything off. But it was even after that outing, you could kind of see like he just looked shaken. His confidence was not there. His command was just not there all year. Really, I mean, it really hasn't been in his entire career. I don't know if he's ever registered a walk rate under 10% in his career. I genuinely don't know. I'd have to look. That's bad. But so the biggest issue of like, okay, the underlying metric should say that the pitches should be doing better, but they're not. Why? It's probably going to be command. And that could be also the biggest reason of like, all right, the underlying metrics should say that this pitch sucks, but it doesn't. Why? It's probably because they can command it really well. As I was saying earlier with Max Fried's fastball, his fastball, like it doesn't really, the underlying metrics would tell you like that shouldn't be a very, very good pitch, but he has really good command of it. And he knows where he wants to throw it and throws it in this one specific spot most of the time. And that's why it's so good. So for Ottavino, it was probably just, yeah, the slider and the two seamer and the cutter are still moving very well, but he has no idea where it's going.
Mm-hmm. So how would you approach a guy like Ottavino then, where what you would want out of the pitch in a vacuum exists, but where the execution in terms of location and that actual result, in whatever way you want to measure that, preferably not ERA.
Yes.
What would you do? Would you have traded him to the Red Sox, or would you have tried to work with him and find some different solution where the stuff translates better to the stats sheet?
I will answer this by saying, under the current way the Yankees are operating under a budget, which is stupid and ridiculous. Let me say that.
Agreed.
That is dumb. Under the current way they are operating, the trade makes sense because they can save Ottavino's salary and then go sign other people if they want to. They still have like a week left, and I don't know how you feel, but my expectation is still that Brett Gardner is coming back in some weird way.
I don't get why people are mad about that.
It doesn't. He's
budget
still,
fourth outfielder. Like,
yeah,
every team has him.
But the other thing is like he's still good.
Yeah,
he was still good in 2020. Like he still produced.
He can play center field. He's a left-handed bat, and no one expects him to be very good. So, like, yeah, $3 million for Brett Gardner. Who gives a fuck?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Anyway.
Okay. We agree. But if they were not operating under a budget, I don't think that trade happens. Like, I think that trade only happens because they just wanted to get rid of the salary. But I think if I were working with Ottavino, we would be looking at a lot of film. A lot of film to figure out, okay, is it a mechanic issue? And if it is a mechanic issue, where in his release, where in his motion is he sort of deviating from 2019 form a bit, or if he's just like finishing out front too much, the ball is his hands too far back, whatever it may be. Let's try and see if we can find it in the video. That would be the first thing I'd do, because as you said, yeah, I mean the spin's still good, the movement's still there. It's just his command isn't. So is it a mechanical issue with the command, or is it literally just like he just needed some confidence? Sometimes that's all it is just like players just they get into these weird funks and they just get down on themselves and they just make it worse. But if I were working with him, a lot of it would just be, okay, we don't need to do anything in pitch design. Your pitches are designed fine. They're doing what they're meant to do. It's your command of the pitch. So let's check the video, then let's throw bullpens and let's just work on command in your bullpens. Like I'm gonna put specific targets out and you got to hit those targets, right? So like, if there's no catcher, I'll set up, you see some people, they have those screens and they put like black dots and stuff on there. Like that's what I would do. Like that's, that would be what I would be working with Ottavino on. Like I need you to throw your two seamer here 5 times in a row. Then I need you to throw your slider here 5 times in a row. Right, to improve the command. But truth be told, like I don't know what Boston's gonna have him be doing. They could be having him do that. But if it were me, I would have not made that trade because a salary dump when you're the Yankees is ridiculous. But I get it why they made it though.
So one of the things that has me concerned. Oh, Corbin, did you want to say something?
No, go ahead.
Okay. One of the things that has me concerned is that the phrase "establish the fastball" is going to become commonplace again. I'm very worried about this because it's like what you said. Like his movement is so great that you knew if it was gonna it looked like everyone just kind of stopped swinging at it. Because his movement's so wild in a vacuum, which would be good, but unfortunately in reality is a problem. And that's one of the things that makes the individual stat be tough because the actual result requires that second person, the batter.
Yeah.
And if all of those really big movement pitches resulted in whiffs, all of a sudden those pitches are great. The problem is
they don't.
That's not happening.
Yeah.
And that's what makes, I think, Ottavino such an interesting case, because I think we can all still recognize, like I have his page up here. He had 3.3 additional vertical inches of movement on his sinker above average, and 8 inches of additional horizontal movement on his slider against average in 2020. Those are huge numbers.
Yeah, that's, if I saw that, I'd be like, that's great. Those
PPR
pitchers are moving great.
Right. And the problem is they just didn't. He still ended up having, a relatively tough year. Again, skewed because of that one big outing.
Yes.
But he had a tough year, and it's the reason I'm afraid of the phrase establishing the fastball coming back is that, man, I don't want to hear this be, because he was like the poster child of reinventing your pitching using modern technology.
Yes.
And then he got roughed up, and I don't want anyone to go, see, science did this.
Yes. Yeah, that's a real fear. I mean, the other poster child just got paid, so maybe it won't.
True.
But, yeah, I mean, the phrase "establish the fastball" is ridiculous. The common thought amongst very analytical people is throw your best pitches more. If your best pitch is your slider, throw it more. Like, you don't have to throw it so much that it's the only thing you're throwing. But like, if your best pitch is a changeup and you only throw it 15% of the time, increase the usage.
It's marginal utility.
Yeah, like you will probably see more results. If you throw it too much, yeah, it won't become your best pitch anymore. But like, you increase the usage of your pitch. That doesn't mean throw your fastball more, because it might not be your best pitch. I'm not telling Kyle Hendricks to throw his fastball more. That's a bad idea, right? He's not the kind of guy for it. I might tell somebody like Aroldis Chapman, yeah, you can throw your fastball more. He already throws it a lot, but right? There are some guys who can throw their fastball more. Like Garrett Cole, he throws his fastball a lot. Yeah, it's because it's a really good fastball. Like, it's a great pitch.
I think Zach Greinke should throw his eephus more.
Yes.
I want it. That's the only reason.
Just because it's a visually appealing pitch, I agree.
And to scream while he does it.
Yes. You know what's funny is he might do that just because he's Zach Greinke. I love Zach Greinke, though.
I love him so much.
He's so great for the game of baseball. But
I want him to fight for setting that record again for the slowest possible pitch he could throw.
He's going to come out there and underhand toss it one of these days.
The thing about Zach Greinke that I really enjoy is, first of all, he's a Hall of Famer, and I don't think most people know that. Like, he's definitely going to the Hall of Fame. He's a great pitcher. Second of all, he's going to last for so long just because he pinpoints everything. Like, he's like, I only throw 90 miles an hour, but like, I don't really need to throw that much harder.
Greg Maddux.
Yeah, he's like, I can pump it up to 92 if I need to, but I don't really need to.
I'll throw my 88 mile an hour fastball and my 89 mile an hour changeup all day.
Yep. It's hysterical.
Does it need to make sense? Nope.
And somehow it's still really effective. It's so weird. I love Zach Greinke. But
it's amazing.
Yes, back to your point about establishing the fastball and just like people crapping on pitch design. I would say that like maybe it might happen if the guy who just got paid struggles this year. But on the one hand, I want that guy to struggle.
Yes.
Same.
Yes.
So much.
He's 0-4 against the Padres, so the more he plays against them this year, the worse he's going to be.
Oh yeah.
Hey, if Fernando Tatis Jr. hits a home run in all those outings, we're all happy people.
Yes.
The world is better for it.
If Fernando Tatis hits a home run in each one of those outings, I'm getting a tattoo of him on my face.
You should. You should do that anyway.
I like that I've just like naturally got like 3 inches from the camera to make that statement.
All right, so I have another question for you, Max, and this is it's difficult because a lot of these metrics, or at least how we collect the data, is relatively new.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were to, which one do you think is more coachable? The ability to throw with a high spin efficiency and having, getting good movement and all these types of things, or better decision making in sequencing and execution?
Ooh, I like that question. That's a really good question. I would say the thing that's more coachable is improving the movement and spin efficiency and stuff, because you can just sit there with a player and show them like what their hand is doing to get the spin direction that gets the movement and the spin efficiency, right? You can show them that. The sequencing, you have to sort of talk through their stuff and figure out how it all works together. And like some pitchers, they're not going to know that. Whereas if you just show them what their hand is doing, they're like, okay, I can see that. Whereas with pitch sequencing, it's like, I can't see that necessarily, right? And we don't, some teams might have data on it, but for the most part, it's like, okay, you feel that your fastball sets up your changeup really well. Let's see like how it, let's get some overlays. Let's see how they work together. Let's compare the metrics and how they move together, right? But that's not necessarily something that can be easy to see. Whereas, improving the spin efficiency and changing the spin direction, yeah, that's easy to see. Just change your hand a little bit, change how you grip the ball. That's all good. So I would say that the changing the movement profile and spin efficiency is easier to coach, whereas I think that might not necessarily have more value. It could, but pitch sequencing is going to be just as important, but harder to explain.
Okay, so you would rather have, I don't know, who's a young pitcher that's still trying to figure it out? Maybe like
Chris Paddock.
Yeah.
Okay, so you'd rather have Chris Paddock over, I don't know, let's assume Ottavino's issue with sequencing just for the sake of conversation. You'd rather have Paddock and try to teach him better with movement than you would Ottavino with sequencing.
Yeah, I also think Chris Paddock's issue is just like super fixable. His spin on his spin direction on his fastball and just like his fastball in general, it just needs like a rehaul. They just need to go over it. I think the other pitches are fine. I think his changeup's good, his curveball's improving, but it's just his fastball is just so out of whack that it's easier. That would be an easier fix than fixing Ottavino.
I think Paddock's issue is the mullet.
Yeah.
Ruining his aerodynamic ability to throw the ball.
Yo, Josh, I'm about to quit this fucking podcast. You coming out here with statements like that. Are you serious?
I might make a mullet bet with you about Chris Paddock's ERA at this point.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, once he fixes the fastball, like Max was saying, like if it's an easy fix like that, the rest of his struggles with his pitches kind of branch out off of that. At least everything I've read into it. Max, you're much smarter about this. If I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong, please. But I think if he can fix the fastball, I think he's going to come back to his, rookie year trajectory. So
I think he fixes the fastball without that mullet. That mullet's got to go.
You've said some wild ass shit on this podcast. This is one of the worst.
He looks like a bully from a 1980s high school drama. Like,
and is that a problem? Can baseball not have heels?
Yes.
Okay.
Look at Fernando Tatis Jr. He is the future. Chris Paddock looks like he's stuck 30 years ago. He wasn't even born.
Josh, I will ask you this since you're saying this about the mullet. Should the Yankees have facial hair or not have facial hair?
Oh man. My problem is I don't give a shit.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Because if you're to tell me that George Steinbrenner's dying wish was that the Yankees never have facial hair and everyone in the organization's cool with it, fucking okay. Or if Hal Steinbrenner announced tomorrow that he's getting rid of the facial hair policy, fucking okay. I don't give a crap.
Do you think in general Yankees fans would give a shit if they were like, yeah, no, we're going to go back to normal, like we're just going to say fuck it, you can have it? Do you think fans would be outraged by
I think there would be. I think there's a few fans that would be upset. I think there's a noticeable percentage of the fan base that would be
older,
mad.
But yeah, because the thing people don't realize or at least remember about the facial hair policy is that Steinbrenner issued that when he bought the team in the 70s, because before he bought the team was in like fucking chaos. And the idea of the facial hair and hair length policy was, we're going to run this as a tighter ship. You guys will figure your shit out. Stop being quite so wild with it all. And we're going to build a winning organization. And that starts with appearance. And it was never like it became a thing, like a permanent thing, but it didn't start off. It's not like the Yankees and, not like Babe Ruth was forbidden from having a fucking beard. Like,
No.
it's not that far back. It's a policy from like the early 70s. Like, it's not an institution if you don't want it to be. Like,
Yeah,
it can be gone. It's not the pinstripes. Like, it's just fucking hair. So I don't give a shit.
Yes. If it were me personally, I have a beard, so I'm biased, and if I work for the team, I would have to shave it. And I don't want to do that. So if it were me personally, I would get rid of it, just because it's also dumb to tell players like they should or should not have certain styles of facial hair and beards. Also, because Andrew McCutchen looked so goddamn scary without it.
It was weird, and also the problem that the Yankees are going to encounter at some point. And it's honestly quite shocking that they haven't encountered it yet, but they're going to have to encounter it at some point. What do you do when a player comes along with dreadlocks? You ain't telling that dude to fucking cut him. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that was
shouldn't, but like,
lucky
you're going to have to let him have
them. McCutchen had already cut his hair.
Yeah,
he did it out of his own whim. He just wanted to.
Got a haircut.
He got a couple more with the Giants.
But if he hadn't cut his hair, then it's like, oh god.
Because you just can't, like, morally, ethically, you shouldn't tell a guy with dreadlocks to cut his hair. And if you're gonna make the exception, then like, why do we give a shit at all?
At all, yeah, exactly.
And again, like, just PR wise, like telling a lower level prospect who's coming up for injury relief to cut his dreadlocks is one thing. Telling a guy like Andrew, well, it's going to be viewed as one thing and different than telling a guy like Andrew McCutchen to cut his dreadlocks. The institution that is
baseball writers will view it differently.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be, and it wouldn't be, but so many people who just don't get it would view it as different. And now I kind of want to see this happen, like, really bad.
I agree. I think it would.
All things in time.
Team chaos.
In a
team chaos, baby. Team chaos. All right. Corbin, do you have any other questions about pitch valuation or any of the other shit we just talked about?
Who are your Cy Young predictions for next year?
I would say, I don't know who my predictions are, but I would say a couple sleepers, I guess, per se, out there. I don't know, how much of a sleeper he really actually is, but I really liked Dylan Bundy in 2020. If he was that good, that guy, he could be a real sleeper pick. He was really good in 2020. Another guy is Kenta Maeda. I think he's a good sleeper pick too. In the National League, I want to say my boy, but he did have elbow issues, and we got to see how healthy he is. But if Lamet is actually healthy and dominates, he's a great sleeper pick. But I'm hesitant to pick anybody from either of the Central divisions, just because those, especially the NL Central. Oh my God, what a waste of a division that is!
Absolute shit show.
Yeah.
So you're telling me Pirates, opening day starter Steven Brault isn't going to be your Cy Young pick?
No,
what?
No.
Not if he was, unless he's also pitching against the Pirates as well as for the Pirates. Then no.
But the Brewers do have Brandon Woodruff, who I think is a great sleeper pick. Brandon Woodruff is very, very good.
Mr. Fastball.
Yes.
We would now like you to speak for 30 unprepared minutes about Tony Gonsolin.
I love Tony Gonsolin.
Hey, that's not unprepared.
I love the fact that the Dodgers signed Bauer right when it happened. I got so many texts that were like, "So what happens to Tony Gonsolin?" And I was just so sad. I was like, "God damn it!" He was already. People were like, "He's not going to be the fifth starter." I'm like, "Why would he not be the fifth starter? He's like their third best starter right now." Then they signed Bauer. And now I'm just sitting here like, he's not going to make starts, and I am sad.
I'm sure he will because of Clayton Kershaw's eternal back issues. But
yeah,
he won't be getting starts because he won't be getting the type of starts you want, which is we're starting Tony Gonsolin. He'll be getting starts where it's like, today we're starting Tony Gonsolin.
Yeah,
that's not the right way.
Yeah. Today it's not every fifth day it's Tony Gonsolin. It's we need a spot start. Here's Tony Gonsolin.
Right, yeah.
Which sucks.
Just looking at the Dodgers rotation right now is fucking scaring the shit out of me. Holy crap.
Tony Gonsolin is their sixth starter. Sixth. That guy had a sub-2 FIP last year and a sub-2 ERA. Like, he had great stuff, and
I-
he's their sixth starter.
I get why the
hate it.
Padres are going so hard right now to just build
Pitching.
depth at every position. I mean, the
Yeah.
Dodgers right now, Clayton Kershaw, Walker Buehler, this guy, Trevor Bauer, we'll see if he's good. David Price, Dustin May, Julio Urias, and Tony Gonsolin. What the fuck?
Yeah, their rotation is crazy.
Yeah, it's
And it makes
genuinely
me sad.
upsetting.
It's highly upsetting because of who they signed. I wouldn't
I was
have
about to
cared.
say, let's
like-
get into that a little bit.
Yeah, like if I wouldn't have cared if their rotation was 6 deep with those 6 guys, and I would still say like that's a great rotation. But they signed, goddamn, the most frustrating individual that baseball seems to have at the moment, because Trevor Bauer is a goddamn head case. He is so frustrating and annoying, and just rewarding that guy with the highest average annual value in the sports history is just infuriating.
It's infuriating for a bunch of different reasons. And the thing that I think gets me the most about it is that all he really did was have a really effective marketing machine behind him. And that's kind of it.
He had
Like,
Pitch a Cy Young.
well,
years
he
last
pitched
year.
a Cy Young against like the worst competition in recorded history in a shortened season for starters.
Just saying he had a marketing machine behind him is like
no, because what I'm trying to say is like,
genuine.
well, no, because it is. Like, he is a guy whose name is constantly in the news and is constantly in part of a conversation about baseball, in large part because he does it himself and forces his name to be in there. And that's frustrating because, one, he is forcing us to listen to him. Two, he's showing baseball, hey, look, it's actually not that hard. Marketing is pretty easy. And three, if you want to tell me Bauer is a high upside guy in terms of on the field production, that's fine. If you're telling me he was worth $40 million a year on one shortened season and a handful of good starts elsewhere, I don't know how you justify that.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Bauer is, first of all, he cheated. Like,
yes, and he advertised that he cheated.
Pitchers use pine tar all the time, right? And that's fine. I got no issue with that. But the thing was, he railed against it for years against the Astros, saying that they were cheating using pine tar to, buff up their stuff. He's like, he literally said, I can increase my RPMs by 300 on each pitch if I just start using pine tar. What happened? All of his spin rates on every single pitch jumped up by, guess what? 300 RPMs. Now, Trevor Bauer is the sort of one of the poster boys of the data revolution in player development and pitching. If he had said, I discovered another way to increase RPMs, I probably would have believed him.
Yeah.
Because nobody else is really doing it. But he didn't say that. He's
like the face of Driveline.
Yeah, he didn't say that. He didn't say anything about it. His RPMs just increased, and then somebody was like, so you use pine tar? And he said no, and I'm like, you're lying. Like, everyone knows you cheated. I brought it up with my boss at the Nationals, or my former boss, I should say, at the Nationals, and he's like, yeah, we know. Like, it wasn't a secret. Everyone knew he was doing it. And that was the part that bugged me the most, is I don't have a problem with you doing it. You, like, if you're a pitcher, do it. Like, if you can get away with it, go ahead. That's fine. Like, whatever. But don't rail against it for years and then do it yourself and then just be like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. And then also just because he's a complete dickhead and treats women like crap.
Yeah, adding in all the off the field issues.
Yeah,
Corwin.
I genuinely think a big part of why he signed with the Dodgers over another team, besides $40 million, that's kind of a big deal. I think he's still cranky over having Garrett Cole be the better UCLA starter and wants to face off against him one-on-one in the World Series and just proved his ego that he's the better one of the two.
So what you're saying is you don't think the Mets are going to the World Series?
No, I really don't think the Mets will make the World Series.
That's a hot take.
I'm willing to make that prediction now.
That's a hot take.
I would say that there are two teams out west that are much better than the Mets. And
Yes, but neither of
potentially
them have Mr. Met on their side.
yeah, that's true.
Neither of their owners are, getting into it with people on Twitter.
Yeah, that's true. Uh, I think I think you're right. I think there is a little bit of Bauer that like he wanted to go to a team that was going to contend for a World Series to
Wants a
just beat
stage.
Garrett Cole. Yeah, and it's gonna be so funny when Garrett Cole outpitches him in the World Series if it gets to that. Like, because he's a better pitcher. He just
I
sorry.
think we're looking down a possible timeline where Bauer gets dropped in the rotation. I mean, Bauer has 2 seasons under a 4 ERA. And I know ERA is not the end all be all of pitching statistics. We just spent a lot of time talking about that. But at the same time, as an easy, quick, and efficient method of getting a ballpark estimate of this guy's talent, 2 seasons under a 4 ERA. That's
One
it.
of them was he pitched like 60 something innings and was cheating while he did it. And that's the other thing is like his first start, the opposing team's just gonna go, hey, check his glove. They're gonna say that because it's so obvious.
All
They're
right,
just
what's
gonna be
their
like,
schedule?
yeah, they're just gonna check.
And
It's
so I think we're looking at like a non-zero possibility that Tony Gonsolin might end up pitching a comparable number of innings to Trevor Bauer if he goes to LA and then just sucks it up, which is not weird. It would not be weird to happen because there's very good hitters that the Dodgers are going to have to face on a very regular basis that reside in San Diego.
Yes, they'll have to play San Diego. I don't think San Francisco is a pushover either. Like they're not
if they're especially not if they're playing away from Candlestick or what is it now, Oracle.
Yeah, they're not a pushover either. Diamondbacks and Rockies, like yeah, they're not great. But
no, the Rockies have Arenado. Oh.
Oh no.
The Dodgers open up the season with a 4-game stretch in Colorado.
Oh God.
Guaranteeing, Trevor Bauer a start, at Mile High. Not Mile High, fuck me. We're gonna see Trevor Bauer get fucking rocked, and I am all for it. I can't wait.
It's
3 home runs in the first inning. We'll see him get pulled after 2. I'm ready.
Oh, I'm ready for it too.
Yes.
But I think the other problem with the whole Bauer saga, and this goes back to something I said earlier, it's once again baseball not putting fans in a great position. Yep. Because if you're a Dodgers fan, fuck.
Yep.
And I feel this every time I see Aroldis Chapman come out to pitch. It's like, I want the win. I'm not sure I want you to get it, but I want it. Like, and every 5th day or whatever, Trevor Bauer's going to come out to pitch. And I'm not saying every Dodgers fan universally understands who this guy is as a human, whatever, but the people who know are going to go, well, fuck, I still want the Dodgers to win. But I don't want it to be you. And no one wins in that scenario.
It's when he signed, I texted my girlfriend. I said, I wonder how Mookie Betts and David Price feel right now. You just had a whole season where we were talking about racial justice issues and everything, and you just signed a guy who's basically, a internet conspiracy theorist who happens to be good at baseball. Like,
has Trevor Bauer commented on race?
He's never commented on race, but there is that tweet of like the George Soros thing that's like, oh, I'm funding black hate groups. And
plus he was a big MAGA guy while Trump was running the first time.
Yeah. And he was like, oh, you can't speak truth like that, or people call you, racist or something. And I was like, yeah, because it is, Trevor.
No.
Like, geez, Trevor, I wonder why they're going to say that. But yeah, I mean, like, for them, that had to sting. You come here and you have these honest conversations and your teammates back you up on this stuff. And then you just, and there's Trevor Bauer.
MLB has done such a bizarrely poor job. Well, I guess it should be bizarre because they're terrible when it comes to anything race related. I mean, it's not just that Trevor Bauer has, like, this is the same guy who kicked BLM off the mound in his start against the Brewers after was it Devin Williams? I always get his name.
Yeah,
Devin Williams had written it on so that Trevor Bauer could write in like something fucking beer related, Bud, I think, because of a sponsorship deal he had. Like during the summer that we just had, which was full of, conversations about racial justice. And he's like, I have a sponsorship. And it's like, oh my God, like, dude, like, not only is this tone deaf beyond belief, morally bankrupt, you just failed to read the room. You're going up against a black pitcher who wrote something meaningful to him and his people on the mound, and you said, I don't give a shit, and kicked it away. Who are you? And if he's not going to care in that moment, he's never going to care.
Yeah,
Ever.
I think we can all agree that Trevor Bauer is the kind of guy to put himself and his issues so significantly ahead of that of anyone else's.
Well, and I'd also like to take a moment to shit on the Dodgers, because David Price paid for all the Dodgers staff to get paid during the shutdowns and when the Dodgers had reduced staff during the season. And then they shell out $40 million a year for Trevor Bauer after claiming we're too poor to sponsor or to give like the minimum fucking wage job people that we have working here jobs pay for the summer. And then $40 million right after the coronavirus season that you have to drop on a dick. Like, where was that money when David Price was paying out of pocket for these people to have money over the summer? Like, like what are we doing? It's frustrating. It's such a frustrating issue with baseball where the ownership just shows you they don't give a fuck unless it's about money.
Yep, it's like a complete lack of accountability that just drives me insane.
Yep,
I can't say no one is going to call them out in any meaningful way because of this shit that they seem to do at every turn.
Yeah, it's like go ahead, Max. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, I think that's just such a good way to end it. You guys just nailed all the thoughts that you needed to nail. Also, because I have to go.
Well, hey, we appreciate you taking the time. This was a really, really great conversation. Do you have anything else? Anything you'd like to plug? Any way that people can find you before we get on out of here?
Yeah. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, you don't have to. They're mainly just a bunch of dumb baseball tweets. But it's at Greenfield Max 18 on Twitter. This was a lot of fun. I thought we had a really good conversation about pitching. I think this was the most detailed questions I've ever had about pitching. So I appreciate that. That
we take pride in that.
Yes, you really put my knowledge to the test, and I appreciate that. Yes, just go ahead and follow me on Twitter. I'll have another article about Max Scherzer on Pitcher List in this upcoming week.
Ooh, all right. Yeah. That's awesome, man. Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Max, thank you for having me. Go, I have one final question for you.
Yes.
Team Nick Polak or Team Alex Fast?
Oh, that's mean. Don't do that. Don't do that to me. Oh, they're both my boys. I'm going to go ahead and wave the white flag and just jump over the bridge and kill myself before I answer that question.
I can commend that.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, man. Once again, thank you to Max. Again, in case you missed it, you can check out his Twitter. He is on Twitter as Greenfield Max 18, no underscores, Greenfield Max 18. Check out his upcoming article on Pitchers List about Max Scherzer and check out all of his other previous works. Dude is fucking smart. Corbin,
Jesus Christ.
I got a lot of energy. We're getting ready. So the Super Bowl is happening today as we're recording this, but it's happening like 6 hours from now. So we're probably not going to say anything about it until after it happens. In the past, we've done some impromptu recording sessions after the conclusion of the game, but due to our separate locations this time around, it's just not going to happen. But check that out. For Thursday's episode, we'll talk about it once it's officially old news. And all the other crazy shit that's going on in the NFL. We'll pack all of it in onto Thursday's episode, so keep an ear out for that. Corwin, anything else before we wrap it up?
Oh man, I feel like there was something I wanted to add, but now I forgot, and we're gonna push it to Wednesday, just like, the end of every episode. Push it to next episode.
Yep. That's the way this podcast rolls. Well, all right. Thanks again to Max Greenfield. You can check out all his shit. If you want to follow us on Twitter, if you want to follow this show on Twitter, you can follow us at JuicingPod. If you want to do so via email, you can do so at juicingthenumbers@gmail.com. And until Thursday, y'all have a good one.
Bye.